Can you open the eyes? Can you open your eyes and still keep meditating? Very good practice. Only the bestowal of tranquility of mind is God's grace, not the fulfillment of one's senses, fulfillment of one's desires. Only the bestowal of tranquility of mind is God's grace, not the fulfillment of one's desires. There's a lot more in that statement than one might first see. It touches on a timeless theme in the Vedas of Satyam and Mithya, the real and the apparent, what appears to be and what is. And tranquility and fulfillment are no exceptions to that. We can have fulfillment with a capital F, or we can have it with a small f. If the fulfillment relates to and is dependent on external sense input, then it is a dependent reality, a dependent fulfillment or tranquility. And if it's dependent on what the senses are relaying to my innermost, they will be judging it, as always, according to likes and dislikes. And if there are more likes and very few dislikes, I can be in a comfortable zone and I can feel tranquil. But that's pertaining to sensual input. And therefore, that fulfillment would be dependent state of existence. And if it's dependent on something prior, it can't be truth. It can only be mithya. So what is the difference between that fulfillment that is satyam and how does it vary from that which is mithya? Broadly speaking, if it is in the domain of mind and desire, it will be governed, as always, by sensual input. Whatever I'm seeing, hearing, tasting, believing, or have, this is influencing my experience of fulfillment. It can even go so far as if then. If this, and this are here now, I will be fulfilled. It's a dependent reality. And it keeps me in a conditioned way of living. And maybe my greatest opportunity in this life is to break away from that conditioning, moving towards an object of desire, pravriti, moving away from an object of aversion, nivriti. If we look at loyalty, the same would apply. Loyalty to what? The keywords in this statement. So I could read my own writing. Only the bestowal of tranquility. Okay, so let's look at that word bestowal. If it's taken by humans that it's up to them to derive their sense of fulfillment, if it's not only up to providence, but I can do something about it, then what is the bestowing got to do with it? What is the bestowal of tranquility, as Bhagavan uses that word tranquility? First of all, the way Bhagavan would be using that would be the true version, or satyam, that which does not depend on anything prior. If that tranquility, which is not based on anything prior, can only arise in a mind that's free of desires, then maybe he's referring to a mind-free state of being. Or if one can be fully conscious, but just completely self-contained, content with this moment at this time. In that state of, it can appear to be self-induced tranquility, and certainly there is my part to that. But then this is where the wheels usually fall off. I make the vow, I make the attempt, but I don't continue. And that's always humans' condition. If a chameleon is able to move from a green leaf to an autumn colored leaf, there will be change, but it's part of his vasanas that he came in with. It happens seamlessly. So as the outer condition changes, so the inner condition quite seamlessly matches it. The outside environment is green, then soon he becomes green. But what if he had to encounter a color that he'd never experienced this life or previous lives, like violet? Would it have the memory and the capacity or the vasanas to take on violet? No, hasn't been conditioned. If he were to move from a green leaf to an autumn colored leaf, the change would be pretty quick. If you had to put this little chap on a velvet cloth, how long would this poor chap have to stay there? How long? If I don't have that as a tendency, it won't come up that easily. So if I wish to see and experience what happens in a state of mindfulness, it's a wonderful resolve. And in fact, according to Bhagavan, it would be the only resolve worthwhile following in this life, because it's what directs everything, or my thoughts and thinking. So if I was to see the value in not getting torn between different terminals in my consciousness, but wanting to become collected, stilled, and tranquil, then there's a little price tag. That chameleon has got this wish to become the violet princess. It's a wish, but it's a little homework. And that is where most give up. When they say nothing ventured, nothing gained, ventured means perseverance as well. Oh, I tried that this morning at 8 o'clock and it didn't work. So what's next? Okay, that's mind talk. So that's the chameleon skipping across violet because it can't handle it. But if life says or bestows on me tranquility, it's very different to a man-made tranquility. If we have to make a distinction, one would be based on the sense perception mechanism of Homo sapien, because what gives him fulfillment would be to the degree that his senses are appeased and satiated, and then he feels full. Triptoham, fullness I am. But what about the soul's food? That we forget in the waking dream. We can dream about how it might be, how it could be, and how it should be. But if I have a longing for violet, then let me remember to practice a bit. And practice actually in this sense means no practice. It's just be aware of and be quiet. So what is the difference between sensual fulfillment, which pertains to the senses and therefore the mind, and what is that fulfillment with a capital F that bypasses the sensory equipment? It won't get past the sensory equipment while mind is still active. And that's a problem. And because I don't see the problem, I think so much about tranquility. It doesn't work. Tranquility is your truth. And if you can't handle it, it's something standing in the way. That might just be you and your thoughts and your beliefs and your conditioning. Because by nature, I am that I am. I am fullness. But what's the conditioning throughout my life is that if then. What I need for fulfillment is, and then there will be a then. If I could, if I had, if I will be, then. So if it is a conditional happiness, it's mithya. It's not satyam. It's not based on truth. And if my sojourn here on this planet is to wake up to what's true, then I have served the purpose of this orientation that I've been given. So the tranquility that Ramana was talking about is not what we refer to in the supermarket after a hearty hamburger. God forbid. So that kind of sensual fulfillment is certainly not what he was referring to. Can that fulfillment with a capital F exist while mind is still distracted? I wonder. Can the chameleon turn to purple if it keeps grasping after green and brown leaves? One has to ask. So is there a price? So first of all, the bestowal that Bhagavan refers to, does that imply it's up to us entirely? I wonder, why does he use that word bestow? We do understand also that Bhagavan said different things to different people at different times, depending where the question was coming from. But when he refers to the bestowal of tranquility, he's not referring to man-made satisfaction of desires. So this fulfillment he's referring to with a capital F has nothing to do with what we normally associate with fulfillment. If one had to say there are no specific qualities to fulfillment, would anybody be interested? I doubt it. So the mind needs something in the beginning to get it moving in that direction. After it's moved already, then you can take the crutch away. But the mind will always be, in the beginning, wanting to know what the bottom line is. For who? It's for the persona. The one I've temporarily misidentified with. And then I need to wake up from so that the fulfillment of this waking dream can be complete. So what is that fulfillment? That is not of the senses. If not a grand, beautiful coming together of all the loose parts without any boundaries, without any words, without any meaning, delightfully at home and quiet. It reminds me of that one proverb that we used in the old days. Six bags of rice at my side, a bundle of twigs at the fire. My legs stretched out in front of the fire, the sound of rain on the roof. Tripto hum. I didn't say it quite right, I can't remember it anymore, but it gave a feeling that it wasn't related only to sense organs. There was something in it that was deeper, and it had nothing really to do with the miscellaneous. So if we are to be more and more aware of that part of us that is timeless, it is beholden upon us to make the effort to recognize the violet and make some effort to stay there. For what other reason am I here? Yes, and always what will be in the way are desires and distractions. That is the perennial woof and warp of the waking dream. And a couple of evenings ago, we extolled the necessity of having to choose. It's important to choose. Because what is it in me that's having the freedom to choose? Is it bound by inhibitions? Is choice bound by inhibitions or thoughts? Or do I just go in and choose? And that is the freedom and the beauty of a non-thinking mind. If there is thinking entering, which will always be the case in the beginning, there will be vacillation. Should I do this? Should I do that? What about this one? What about that one? And then the war goes on, the tension continues, and there's no tranquility. There can't be tranquility if there's two sides. It's a dissolving of all these boundaries organically. And then what's left is the truth of what I am. And who cannot be totally fulfilled in that once they're finally home. And here's the proviso, know that they're home. Remember, the prodigal son didn't know that he was at home. So he had to go out and experience what not home was. And only experiencing not home did he fully value home. And then it was just a case of home, Jerome. He had to experience non-fulfillment in order to appreciate fulfillment. He had to experience non-tranquility. And we have to, if we want the truth and the juice of life. And the very things that can give us this opportunity are the very things we condition to suppress. If I truly know what not home is, what a joy to go home. Haven't you taken these two opposing realities and severed them? Is there any decision left? There's no choice. And if there's no choice, there's only one. And if there's only one, there's freedom again. When a second or a third voice chirps, then we've got the same game on. And that's not tranquility. And I can suppress that, and I can suppress that, and I can. But you know what happens if you hold a pressure cooker lid down? It'll get the better of you. It'll come up sooner or later. So to suppress it is not the way. To say yes to it might be the best way. Because yes, it's just staying in the flow of whatever's passing through this moment. Can the mind bring me to fulfillment with a capital F? I believe no. You might have different thoughts. Can it bring us to relative fulfillment? Of course. But if it's a relative fulfillment, it's context dependent. It depends on something being there prior. It will pass away. It's not the truth. It just deepens my conditioning. But the awareness, when in the middle of the day or night, I just suddenly feel quite okay. Very okay. But I haven't got any clue why. I'm just feeling fine. I'm held. I'm contained. Tranquility was bestowed. I didn't generate that tranquility. There was no conscious effort. I will become tranquil. It was bestowed. And who bestowed it? Now are we getting something? Who or what bestowed it? Now there's a question. Who's the bestower and who's the bestowee? Well, the mind will have one answer, and it'll always be based on the notion of duality. And the soul might just smile. Doesn't know all this duality. Doesn't know all this stuff. So if the mind can recognize tranquility, is that the tranquility that Bhagavan is referring to? If in a moment that life descends on me in such a way that it's a mouth-stopping open moment, a jaw-dropping moment, a moment of intense stillness, something that's so quiet I can't believe what it is, and it might only last a short while. And then imagination will say that's what it is, it's imagination. But these are the glimpses of my true nature, and it's up to me to develop them. Because if I don't develop them, then there are a different set of outcomes. So the first thing is, can I be patient and caring about myself and my own needs? Can I be true to me? Who is going to bestow this tranquility if my mind remains determined with its distractions? Who does the bestowing? It's put like that to somebody in the waking dream because that's the only way they relate to it, is cause and effect, or two. But maybe the bestower is, in some very mysterious way, none other than the consciousness that I am. And that is my part and my responsibility for the tranquility that is always waiting to express itself in and through me if the mind would go quiet. If the mind would go quiet. Just in case you didn't get it, if the mind could only be quiet. And for you people, if the mind could only become quiet. So we can practice, or we can put it off. We'll start on Monday. Isn't Monday a good day to start? We all are so aware in one way or another that we are the problem. Yes, we are the solution, but in a real sense, we are the problem. The problem relating to mind, the solution relating to soul or heart. So there are these two aspects in us, the animal and the divine. One is cause, one is effect. One is fulfilled, one is forever lacking. So when you come to the persona, the street level persona, that's one thing. They are looking for fulfillment either in a pub or in a dining room or in a movie or in a holiday. It's external. It passes away. It's not giving me back to myself the tranquility, the stillness, the centeredness that has no equal, it has no second. It's not time bound, it's eternal. There's nothing to fear. That tranquility is my true nature. If anybody would like to say anything, contribute something, you're welcome to.
Can you hear me? So, 2 weekends ago, I had this tranquility bestowed upon me. And it was so interesting because it was as though I had been given everything I've always wanted, but there was no cause. And so there were these two forces at work. The one that said very evidently, there's nothing to do. And then there was another force saying, we need to go and make a cup of coffee. And then I would say, but I'm already content. And then this would fall away. And then a little bit later, I would have this feeling of, let's go and do something that I really enjoy doing. And I'd be like, but I have it already. And this went on over and over and over throughout the afternoon. And it was the most, it
This will
was,
happen for a few years.
sorry?
I say, I wouldn't worry about 2 afternoons. This will happen over a few years.
Well, yeah, it was incredible because I could see how I had programmed myself to survive using a feedback loop that gave an artificial sense of tranquility. And here was
Mm.
true tranquility that I kept trying to add to it, but it was there already. It was what I had striven for, but now there was no reward or success or achievement behind it. It was simply itself. And it went on for the weekend, and then I got busy with my coffee stuff, but it never really disappeared and hasn't. And then the next weekend, when I had time, it re-emerged. When I gave it, I think what you're talking about, when I gave it my full attention, it re-emerged. It became amplified. And then again during the week, things happened, and it didn't matter whether they were a cause of great suffering. It, I suddenly understood what it meant by the suffering was contained within it. It didn't really matter, even though the suffering was real. There was the, I don't want to call it a memory because it's not a memory. There was the tranquility present at all times. And yeah, even now, after a busy week and I'm far away from it in a sense, it is there. That's why I kept smiling while you were talking.
Okay,
So,
so you've had the experience.
mm,
As Ramana would say, once your head is inside the tiger's mouth, you can't get it out. So once you've had the experience, the soul will keep hankering after that because it knows that is not like all the rest. So that moment outside of anything prior to, dependent on, timeless, has to be of itself full because nothing is needed. And that fullness is in fact the greatest emptiness. And emptiness with a capital E is later conceived and experienced to be the greatest fullness. The nature of truth can be relative or absolute. If it's absolute truth, it has to embrace both sides of every paradox, the left and the right. If it only embraces one side, it's a relative truth. It has a viewpoint. It has to imbibe both. So truth is paradoxical by very nature. It's this and that, not or. Or separates and puts asunder, and is saying it's one. It's left and right. It's the head and the tail. So if I have a moment like that, my part, here's a difficult thing with a word now. Some words seem to be missing from our vocabulary. It's not that I'm remembering that, whatever you want to call that. It's not that I'm remembering it in the old way of remembering. It's, let's call it recalling. It's just something that's being recalled into this moment. I'm not, remembering's got the connotation of busyness in mind. So it's not a remembering, it's just a recalling. And if I allow that to be the center of this moment, then I'm feeding it. And then the chameleon is abiding its time on the violet duvet. That's his wish. Violet is the one-way ticket home for a chameleon. So we have this in us that we always know but we pretend we don't know. The soul is always knowing, but the mind has always got to have the last say. This is the conditioning. Only the bestowal of tranquility of mind is God's grace. Tranquility of mind is God's grace. That's with a capital T, capital tranquility. The tranquility of mind is based on if then. It is conditional upon something changing or being there or being not there, and then I will be fulfilled. It's small f. It is not the way of soul or consciousness. And this can be a little bit disconcerting, is that in the mind's attempt to understand this is not yet the realization that it can't. It can't go there. Das is streng verboten. You can't go there. It's not the realm of mind. In other words, it has nothing to do with concepts, but everything to do with Satyam, the original truth. So because my mind is conditioned to wanting instant success, even although the soul knows that this quiet moment, this whatever it is so rare and so unique, and it's got such an amazing offshoot, if I can follow it, then I will make the trouble of kindling it. You kindle a fire, you protect it from the wind. And the wind is a metaphor for thought. And clouds are a metaphor for individual thoughts. Thinking is wind, thoughts are clouds. And a cloudless sky is one that's I, sky. Yes, it's a very convenient and I would say rewarding and prudent and pragmatic stepping stone from fulfillment with a small f to fulfillment with a capital F is that I do it on a gentle gradient, and I find that if I'm ravenously hungry, it's not as easy as if I have had a little supper and I'm a little bit more centered. In other words, can there be some addressing of the lower fulfillment that the body, mind, sense equipment needs? It's on this physical plane, it needs that. It needs this fulfillment, the sensual fulfillment, just as much as my car needs petrol. And if my car is a diesel car, I can't put petrol in the tank. It's not part of its diet. And part of my diet as I'm a seeker is to nurture the timeless, invisible side of my being. And that requires me to pay extra attention when there seems to be nothing here. There is never nothing in that sense of the word as used by us in the West. If there is a nothing, it's a true. Well, I won't add to that, it'll be confusing, but it might be the greatest fulfillment. So to come back to the statement, only the bestowal of tranquility of mind. Why doesn't he say tranquility of soul or tranquility of heart? Or is that already tranquil? What's the problem here, the soul or the mind? So only the bestowal of tranquility of mind is God's grace, not the fulfillment of desires, because we have also seen from the unteaching that the satisfaction of one desire, if you've never had that desire and you now have that desire and you're satisfied, is that desire now history and out of your life? Or that desire that you have satisfied creates a little bit of an urge to have another one of those. So in Sanskrit, if something is enjoyed for the first time, then there's an element of bandaha on it. Bandaha, Sanskrit, bonded to. Some attachment is happening there. Oh, it's the Coca-Cola that did it. It's nothing to do with the Coca-Cola. So while things are still in the air, is there something anybody would like to say about anything on this or anything else? So the fulfillment of necessities, or the fulfillment that comes when necessities, physical necessities are addressed, yes, that's fulfillment. And it's much easier using that as a springboard for a deeper fulfillment if that fulfillment has been addressed. So if I'm wanting to feel into that stillness, that emptiness, then can it be compounded in a beautiful way by at least having honored the body mind sense complex and given it some fulfillment, even if it's just a sandwich or a tea and a rusk or whatever it is. It's taken the edge off hunger. It's easier from that small fulfillment to approach something that goes beyond that. Like that expression in India, you can't teach a hungry man how to meditate. His mind's not on meditation. So first give him some food, and then he might be able to hear what you have to say about meditation. And so it is with all of us in the waking dream. The body-mind sense complex has got a demand for something, and until that's addressed, it's actually a little bit deaf, a little bit blind to what the soul is needing. Just a little tad deaf, a little bit blind to what the soul is really needing. And it's often very different to what the senses are wanting. And then, do I keep gratifying the senses? Or do I go on a sense fast? I'm being facetious here. There's no such thing as a sense fast. It's just an awareness that senses enrich my life. They are a pleasure. They are necessary. They're God-given. It's part of Icha Shakti, the power of desire, that comes with the experience of the fruits of desire. So to become a Spartan or have an anemic diet is not what's being called for here at all. It's just, what is this inner contentment? This inner containment have to do with anything outside of me, with anything or anyone. Yes, if there is an outward coming together or feeling of oneness, then it certainly helps the inner one. So the fulfillment is actually bestowed, if it's the capital F, and it will be bestowed when the aspirant is willing for it, ready for it, and wants it. I've seen through again and again. I've been disappointed by again and again, and still I keep doing the same thing instead of once just saying, okay, now let's just be quiet and let's just see how this is going to unfold in its way. I'm not going to do anything. And let's just see. It could be an experiment done on a Sunday, and there's nothing serious. Maybe nothing is serious, other than what the mind makes of it. So what is it that really is Satyam? What is the truth? If I'm a truth seeker, then what is the truth? What is the truth? It can't be something that satisfies the mind or the intellect. That's the sixth sense. We've got the five external senses, and we've got the internal sixth sense, which is the mind with its thoughts and its thinking. And whatever can satisfy the external five and the internal one has a form on it, has a name on it, is attachment, is going to pass away. It has nothing to do with truth. It will not bring me fulfillment. It'll just put me on a roller coaster. And then you might say, enough of that. I'm just going to be quiet. And then how long can you be quiet? This is the acid test now. Before, there's the urge for this or that. And what is the urge for this or that? If it's not to get away from yourself. Who am I trying to get away from by distracting myself? In the Vedas, they talk of the unpleased person, the displeased person. And they say that the average human being is displeased in some way with life, with his lot, with something. If he was fully pleased, would there be any desires arising? Would there be any need to go anywhere, say anything, do anything, if I'm totally fulfilled in the truth of my being? And the answer is maybe not. So there is a relative quietude, a relative fulfillment, and it's a prerequisite to the fulfillment or the tranquility, and it could be seized with both hands. Yes, even if X, Y, and Z brings me into a state of fulfillment. Yes, it's conditional. Yes, it's mithya. It's dependent on something being there first in order for this feeling to arise. But in the beginning, it's necessary. So let me not pick up guilt by doing this in order to feel fulfilled. But once the fulfillment is there, now the test comes. Can I shift the awareness from the object of what brought me the fulfillment to the fulfillment? That's the trick. Can I now shift my focus from the bestower of that tranquility and the feeling of tranquility itself? How do I merge with tranquility? So yes, there is the agent of tranquility. Might be a lovely coffee. Doesn't matter what it is. Because once I've had that and it's just spot on, or you just had that, whatever it is, that walk, that swim, and it was just perfect. In that moment, the mind has gone quiet. It's in a state of triptoham, tripti and aham. Fullness I am. There's nothing wanting. And if nothing is wanting, it's not conditional upon anything. And therefore it must be true. And a satyam. It has an independent existence of its own. It doesn't depend on anything. That's why it is bestowed. It's given to you. By who? Well, as long as I believe in duality, then we have to look up and say, by that one. But later, we have to smile and wonder at the enormousness of what I am. But I don't have time to reflect on what I am. I'm too busy with specifics. I'm too busy with the concerns. In short, I'm thinking. Money is not the root of all evil. Mind is the root of all evil. Money is one of its scapegoats. So it's a gentle art of learning to shut up. Not shut up your mouth. It has to start there. And it certainly won't end there. It'll be when I can be in a pub full of noisy people and there's just this inner quietness. There's just this inner quietness and okayness with everything. We are one. All in this together. And we are all in this together. We're never alone. Ever, ever, ever. We're only alone if we listen to the sense organs. The sense organs perceive distance and separation. The soul doesn't know that. So from a form point of view and from a mind point of view, we are totally different. From the essence of what I am, it's only that essence that knows true fulfillment. And it has to be bestowed. My part is to find that fulfillment that is my part. I can get fulfilled. But once I'm fulfilled, it's very important I don't miss the main step. So even if it was a coffee that brought that first fulfillment, now I drop the coffee and I stay with fulfillment. And I feel into that. What is that? What is that? It doesn't depend on anything prior. That is my true nature. That is what I need to get to know. And in the beginning, funny thoughts will come. And I'm saying now, please, as they come, just say thank you, but no thank you. Flick them away. They are not you. Nor am I the witnesser. Because if there's a witnesser, doesn't it imply there's something that you're witnessing? And if there's a witnesser and a witnessee, there's duality. So when the mind goes quiet, two disappears. Because two's kept alive by mind and only by mind. That's why people are always trying to escape themselves. And how do we try and escape from this duality? It's by drink, or it's drugs, or it's adrenaline pumping exercise, or whatever it is. I'm trying to get away from myself, my thoughts and my thinking. Because in truth, I am not this inadequate, lacking person. That's what I've been conditioned to believe, because I haven't followed that true fulfillment. I've based it on externalities. But the true fulfillment is insight, it's quiet, it's full. It doesn't have anything associated with it. And that's why it's hard in the beginning to stay there, because the mind wants a something to hold on to. Anything is better than nothing for mind, but nothing is the way home for mind, because that's where it can lose itself again, finally. And to just be quietly away. Eyes open, eyes closed is immaterial. It's nothing to do with the body or the mind. It's just feeling, being aware. And who is the bestower of this incredible tranquility? Who or what is the bestower of this incredible tranquility when it arrives? In other words, when mind has exited. So anything that incites thought and thinking is not the way to that. It's the way out into the labor garden, the labor camp. So can I set aside some part of my day to rest in that awareness? How else can it grow? It just means I will remain triggered and a karta or a doer until I can't change it anymore. Then I'm stuck like that. I came in free and ended up a karta, a doer. And all we're looking for is progress in the West. We want to become. We want to become. There's always looking forward. We can't be here in this moment. I wish we could be human beings. I would say we're human becomers because we have this tendency to look in front of us. A human being would be somebody who's humanly being here. So my teacher said, let's first be normal before we try and be human beings. And what he was trying to say there is let us not be too swept away by the form of something, but the feel. What is the feel of that kind of fulfillment? What is the feel in that kind of fulfillment? It's not a head question. It's just a seeing. And if I see that one, yes, sure, that one. You don't have to think, you don't have to do, but it's found you. And once you've spent seconds or minutes in that, and you come into, let's call it a normal state for the moment, it's clear that that was a different way of being here. So if there is an opportunity of feeling fulfillment or satisfaction or tranquility, whatever was the means to that is fine if I realize that it brings me to a point where it has evoked fulfillment. Now, what does that feel like? Now, let me stay with the feeling of what it is to be whole and complete without boundaries, seamless, no thoughts. That is my true nature. That's how I came. And that's how I should go. As Christ said, unless you become like little children when you leave, there's no way. You can't take your thoughts and your thinking and your separation and that kind of fulfillment. Are you going to find crayfish on the other side? You know you like them, dinosaur? I'm just being facetious. So what I can take through, that nobody knows about, is that still center that I am, that you can smuggle anywhere, because I am that. I always was just that. And that, mysteriously, is not different from anyone else's perceived separated center. It's no different to anyone else's perceived separated center. It's only in the waking dream that we have this perception of separation, duality. But Christ and Bhagavan and Buddha were referring to the non-dual state where there is no creator and created. There is just the one. So in that fulfillment, in that tranquility with a capital F and a capital T, it's gone beyond mind. It's a place and a space. Thoughts can't get there. You can just be in that and touched by that. That's why it refers to the bestowal of tranquility. Do I have any say? This is the paradox, yes and no. If I'm talking from the human perspective, do I have a say? No. If I haven't yet owned up to the divinity of my truth, if I haven't yet owned up to the divinity of my truth, or I have actually seen and experienced the fullness behind that masquerade of emptiness. They are not separate. They are the same. There cannot be two. There cannot be fullness and there cannot be emptiness. There cannot be fulfillment and unfulfillment. In that space of stillness, all of these opposites disappear. And what a fullness is that emptiness. If it's a question, that's fine. If there's no question, let's be quiet for a few minutes. I am complete. I am fulfilled. There's nothing lacking. Is the truth that I might need to recall when mind has its way. In the exhalation, let all of these thoughts go. I can. They limit me. They put me in the box. Drop the box. Be quiet. There is no such thing as manana. There's no such thing as tomorrow. This moment is true. Nothing to think about. Just letting go. With a yes to this mystery. Okay. Thank you.